So we're all here tonight, obviously, to find out a bit more about the HealthTech Challenge and to listen to some really interesting presentations. So this is the agenda for the event. We're going to, Jeff is going to give a presentation on why the HealthTech Challenge, give some background information and perhaps some information on what we plan to achieve this year and how we plan to improve and build upon the great foundation we laid last year. I'll then give a quick overview of the challenge itself, the timeline, the deadlines for the various stages, and what's expected from the proposals and the applications. Dr. Robert Phillips will then give a presentation on entrepreneurship in healthcare, and then we have Gemma Gatliff giving a presentation on the journey throughout the entrepreneurship competition. And then we'll finish off with networking and food. I'm sorry, no champagne this evening, but there should be some nibbles, and we'll be in the marquee, which is just across the quad. Okay, so we'll kick off with Jeff, if that's okay.
I was never going to take 20 minutes, and I very much doubt whether I'll take 10 minutes, and I don't need that thing.
Okay.
So there we go. So welcome to you. So how many of you are UCL? And that's great, terrific. Well, welcome to London Business School. It's not that far away, really, is it? In fact, I think we're in terms of business school, you're the nearest university, and likewise as business school. They do say that, and that's going some in London, because they do say that in London you're never more than 10 feet away from a rat or an academic. So it seems to be lots and lots of these places. So, just a little bit, I talk fondly of UCL because I was at UCL. I was commercial director there for 10 odd years, 18 years actually, until I popped over to this place about 8 years ago. So I've got these strong ties between the two. And I've also was once upon a time a PhD in electrical engineering, so that was where the doctor comes from. It's in good solid engineering, not one of these businessy type things. And so I was over in Elec Eng there doing a PhD. And then I went out into industry, as one does, and then came back to UCL with this passion that I have of translating science into business. And that's what drove me. That's why I started what's now UCL Business, and worked with hundreds of academics over many years, either to get industrial collaborations going with them, or to get new ventures or licensing, but somehow the bottom line was always there's some great science going on, some great engineering, great stuff, and yet somehow it's devil's own job to get it translated. It's not rocket science, but these just aren't the types of skills that are taught to anybody, or any scientist or engineer at UCL. It's a lot better than it used to be. You can take courses here, but nevertheless, it's difficult. And the main reason I think it's difficult is because it needs the teams. It needs somebody who is excellent, the technical director, if you like, somebody who is excellent at the technology, obviously, that's got to be world class. And then on the other side, there has to be somebody with a good commercial brain. And it's like the zing and zang. It's like the commercial director and the technical director. That is the team. That's the dipole. That's what's needed very often to take something forward. Then I came over to London Business School, and now I work with a pile of MBA students who have virtually no technology behind them. Right? And so there's a bit of waste there, a bit of redundancy, because there's loads of ambition to start something. There's loads of ambition to work with technology. But they haven't got it, so they end up working, students here end up working on other things which is not tech-based, which seems to me a lot of the time a real shame, because there's that potential just across the path. So, that's really the birth of this. It was last year, actually, Sal here, who wrote to me and said, wouldn't it be nice to have some sort of competition where we can involve people from UCL and from LBS, and they can come together and develop in these teams their ideas together to a point at which maybe, just maybe, they're investable. And this went straight in here, said, right, this is good, we have some enthusiasm, and I went to the head of the healthcare club here, and said, isn't this a good idea? And immediately there was resonance there. So we had the leadership dipole, if you like, that just said, engineer, think it's great, and the healthcare club here, which is a really vibrant club, thought, yes, this is a good new thing to do. We do loads on pharma and existing companies, but to get new ventures going, that would be fantastic if we could have that competition. So we ran it, and just by coincidence at that time, there was an alum of this school who had a friend who had died, and wanted to. This friend was Dhruv Batra. I don't know him, but he was a good friend of the alumni here, and he said, I would love to give a prize in memory of my friend who's died. And so that's when it all came together. We had the prize, we had the motivation from the school, and we had the motivation from UCL, and so we got going. And I have to say, it was a great success for the first year. We had 5 great ventures. One great one that won. I hope we're going to entice him in a later networking session to come back in and say what the competition actually did for him. And so we knew we were at that point onto something, and this was definitely worth repeating. I would like to see this competition go eventually global. I don't think there's too many things like it. I've contacted my various friends and buddies in technology transfer in other countries, and they seem enthusiastic also about somehow working out what this thing is and how they can participate too. So it has the potential to scale, and that is also tremendously exciting from our collective point of view. So what it is the following. We think that there's great science and engineering untapped at UCL and in universities everywhere. And we are specifically for this competition thinking about healthcare technologies. Well, you know that already, but we need to define that a bit further. We don't think we're into pharmaceuticals because there's an established path for that, and it takes so much money that our tiny sums of money can't do very much. We're not so interested in standalone apps, you know, the ones that say that, you know, you're going to be rewarded with some fake points if you are motivated enough to do your exercises each day. I mean, that's healthcare, but it's fairly shallow. We're looking for things that are based on some real technology that could be made a difference to. It's a bit of an ugly way of saying it, but you know what I mean. With relatively small sums of money, are 10,000, and then maybe that scarce sums, fairly scarce sums, are enough to take you to the point where you need the sort of the one-star 100,000. So we can be a bridge to the slightly larger funds, which themselves are a bridge to the even bigger funds, which are inevitably needed to take these things to market. But it's a start and it's a motivation. So what we're trying to do, and I say this evening is part of that, what we're trying to do, is to say, can we uncover those technologies, or more importantly, uncover the people, your comrades in arms, your fellows, who would love to see their technologies actually make some impact, but they don't know how to. On the other side is, I would love to get hold of some of these frigging technologies and work my magic on them from the business side of things. So I could love to apply those skills. And we want to tie those two together in teams. And you know, you have to make your own teams. There's only so much we can do. We can network, but essentially get you together and get you excited, get you working, and then gradually develop those sparks, those glimmers, and turn them into the seeds of viable ventures. And that's what we're trying to do. And it gives you the motivation. There's going to be some mentorship. There's going to be some challenge. You know, what happens at the end of this is that you may have something that goes on to be a viable venture. But really, it's all about the learning along the way. If we can help those with a business background to understand how those with a deep tech background actually work and think, and how to interact with them, how to you know, get involved and get access to that technology, then we've sent a pile of people out who know how to do that in the future. If on the UCL or the university side, we encourage people to come forward with their ideas, and probably for the first time work in close concert with people with a business background and understand how they think and understand the frameworks that they use and understand the way in which they operate. Then, regardless of what happens to the team afterwards, they have also learnt something about the process. And let me say another word here about for the scientists, that I have worked, as I said, with hundreds of scientists, some really good ones as well, from the biomedical side. And what I found is that it is very often that confidence and that early stage experience, once you have it, you realise it's not rocket science, and then the next time round you go for it with complete gusto and saying, I know how to do this, it isn't rocket science, this stuff is accessible to me, I can do it. And so those skills are generic skills and they're permanent skills. And they're the skills that get you on, certainly if you're going to go into business. And actually, I have to say, a lot of the academics I worked with went on to be really rather good academics as well, because the best academics are also professional scavengers and a whole load of other things that also make them great entrepreneurs. So that is the idea. It's a giant learning experience, which is really what we want it to be, with the underlying aim of digging out some great technology, using some great business brains, bringing it together with the central focus of winning that prize and learning a load in the process. So I think you've understood now what drives me in championing this thing, and whether it's for you. But I sincerely hope that it's for you, not only you, as in my technologies, but it can be you as seeds within wherever you come from to say, look, you ought to be applying for this, you ought to be getting into this. In other words, you can be the ones who stimulate others and get others to participate.
Thank you, Jeff.
Not a slide inside, I'm afraid, but there you are. Sometimes oratory.
Great, thank you very much.
I don't know, if there are any questions, then I'm very happy to take questions at this point, or we can leave it till later. No, when somebody's spoken for 15 minutes, there very rarely is a question, but there is one here.
I was just curious, you said that you worked a lot with academics. Do you feel like when you were working with the academics, being that they're in a university, they have IP, was it very hard to get them to move at the speed that you want them to?
I think there are...
And also how do
it's a lovely question. And this is one of the things I think that people from the business world have to recognise when they start working with academics. Right? I had many experiences where we brought in somebody who was had many experiences where we brought in somebody with who was very experienced from the business side, and they knew exactly. Okay, you got that, you do that, you do that, you do that. It's so obvious to me. This is what you do. But they did require, or they did expect the academics to do what they were told, and it immediately became I'm the CEO, you're the technical director. Whereas actually, it's even. It's an even team, and the business person has to go at the same speed as the technical person, and actually that's usually the right speed to go at. Right? Because it isn't usually as black and white and as clear-cut a process as that. They have to go together. And I think that is how half the relationships derailed, is that they just were going too fast and telling rather than selling. They weren't treating their counterpart as an equal. So it is a brilliant question, and it's one of the main things that a business person can learn about working with scientists.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So when you do work with academics and they have an idea, does the IP and the patent, what's the access that we have for that, and what's the sort of barrier to?
Well, it shouldn't be a barrier. I mean, I think that the whole student IP, who owns the IP, is a big thing. I mean, there's been stuff in the Sunday Times in the last 2 weeks about it. If anybody has seen this, 2 weeks ago there was an article about some academic from Aberdeen who started the business, and they were talking about the university taking absolutely flipping ages in negotiating, and when they did they wanted half the business or something like that. So, the IP discussions are inevitably complex. I mean, IP is a complex thing, and so yeah, the answer in my mind is to engage at a senior level and to engage early with the office inside your organisation that is responsible for managing the intellectual property. Be sympathetic to them because it's not simple. Be sympathetic to them because their job is to derive impact from technology, and it's a bit of a leap of faith sometimes to say, yes, of course, inexperienced young PhD who's never been out of school in their life, of course you can take this immensely valuable piece of IP and see what you can do with it. Right? And of course you can be CEO of a company. No, those are all leaps of faith. And so it does, I think, have to be a partnership. But get in early, don't duck it, and get in senior, because the senior people inside your tech transfer offices are actually very good. And they understand the issue. The trouble is that very often you go to the front line of people who simply are experienced in other forms of knowledge transfer other than spin-out businesses. I have to say that my other profession is tech transfer, so yeah, that's how I can put it. Okay, very quick, last one, because I'm almost at 5:30, which is my time.
So how developed should the technologies be? So if we come up with an idea now, do we need to show proof of concept? And if so, how can we do that in the time frame?
No, you don't have to show proof of concept. And anyway, the word proof of concept is it's a rather a loose term, to put it, because what concept and what do you have to show to prove it? In some senses you could say the only time the concept is really proved is when it goes through all the regulatory and it's on the market. Then everything's proved because it's for sale. As long as it's not a breast implant that goes wrong later, then you could say it's not even proved then. But the whole job here is to de-risk it one step at a time. All right, to understand what it is that it's going to require investment. It'll require several rounds of investment, whether that comes from a charitable source, or whether that comes from foundation, or whether that comes from business, venture capitalist, or grant funding. It's going to require investment of one kind. And so the big thing that you have to understand is, why wouldn't somebody invest in it now? What is it that's holding them back from giving me a shed load of money to take it to the next stage? And then focusing on those steps. So that's what I now have to do in order that the next person will actually invest in it. And actually that is the scope of your business plan, is to say, I need some money in order to do this, to take it to this value added step. And then you get a bit more money and you take it to the next step. But you're gradually stripping risk out of this thing. Now it can be, and this is why we're a bit wary of pharmaceuticals, is the first step requires a vast sum of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds, and so you can't do anything at all with 10 grand. And so we kind of think, well, if you can't do anything with 10 grand, then is our money going to unlock? Is it going to be additional to anything at all? Which is why we focus more on the medical devices side of things, where we did feel that it is possible to do something with that sort of sum of money. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Lovely.
So I'm afraid I'm going to have to revert to using some slides. I'll give a quick overview now on the timeline of the competition, what the application deadlines are and what we're expecting in terms of presentations and video footage. So first, if we start with some definitions, Jeff already mentioned what HealthTech is. So just to reiterate that, we're looking at something that any healthcare product, medical device, procedure, aid or software that excludes standalone smartphone applications Apps could of course be integrated with a product, but we don't want to see any standalone apps or new biologicals. So the business proposal, the initial business proposal at least, will be high level, an execution plan. It could be a not-for-profit or a commercial company. There's a lot of flexibility there. What we really want to see is that it's solving a problem, or at least will lead to a problem being solved, a healthcare problem. So how the business is set up and funded or aims to be run is really up to the people making the application. Eligible participants, so teams must be comprised of academic institution affiliated postgraduate students or researchers. That could be researchers from UCL or any other academic institution, but what we really want to see is academics coming together with business school students and together working to develop and formulate their ideas and build investable business proposals. So the timeline, the kickoff today is the 12th of March, and registration will be open until the 12th of February, registration will be open until the 31st of March. We're going to have 2 more networking events between now and then, I believe, at which we'll have speakers, and it will be a good way or a good opportunity for people to mix with other interested parties and perhaps begin forming teams and discussing their ideas and then looking at how they could research it and apply for the competition. Once the first line, the submission deadline has passed, the Healthcare Club here and Jeff and a few other stakeholders will look at all of the applications, we'll judge them, and there will be 5 finalists that will be selected. Those finalists will be allocated to a mentor, and each mentor will work with the teams to help them further develop their business proposition and create a pitch that could be used in the final to pitch the idea to the final to the judges, the judging panel. So first round submissions due 31st of March. We're looking for a PowerPoint presentation, no more than 6 slides, and a 2-minute video pitch, which will be uploaded via our website, and the profile, or I believe we have profile pages for each of the teams, the profile page on the website. So entries, they should include the problem, the need for innovation, what the desire is, and what you're looking to address and change, the proposed idea to solve this, the technical feasibility of the idea. This is the big one. Last year in the final we had a really interesting team, but it was still very much a concept as opposed to a product that had been developed or was in some stage of development. It was really fascinating and something that would really change people's lives, but it likely didn't win because it was at such an early stage of development, whereas the winning team had a wearable device, they could demonstrate that, its use. So how the team would use £10,000 is also of interest to us. As Jeff mentioned, this competition we see as a feeder into competitions like the One Start and then on from there. So we're very interested in how the team plans to use the £10,000, and we do stipulate in the contract and in the legal wording on the website that the money has to be paid into a business bank account, I believe, that is set up for the company. The IP ownership position that was mentioned before, we really can't facilitate communication between teams and the IP departments in the various universities. That's really their responsibility, and we want to understand that that has taken place and that the teams are informed. And in addition to that, we really want to understand who the teams are, perhaps most importantly, the relevance of their positions, what they've been working on, what their expertise is, and what value they bring to the team together. And yes, hopefully forming teams with business students as well as academics will strengthen the teams in that respect. So the final live presentation, the best 5 ideas, we say best 5 ideas, it's very hard to choose the best 5 ideas out of, we had 25 applications last year, and I think at least 10 of them could have gone through to the final. It was really tough to make that decision. But the 5 ideas that do make it through to the final will be announced by the 2nd week of April. They will then, as I mentioned before, have a mentoring opportunity. So the mentors are used to to perhaps guide the teams in where they could fill holes in their pitch or their application currently, perhaps if the market hasn't been researched sufficiently well, or if forecasting hasn't been conducted. Business, I guess, ideas that can help strengthen the pitch and prove to the judging panel, who will consist of VCs and PEs, as well as academics, that it's a really viable idea and investable. So, as Jeff mentioned before as well, this is the Drift Batra Prize, and the winning team will be determined by a panel of maybe 5 judges, but that's growing. So we don't know quite yet, but they're all really experienced, and it's a great opportunity for the teams to pitch to an experienced panel of judges, and at the same time network with them after the event and make some very good contacts. So before we move forward, does anyone have any questions about the application process, what's involved, how you go about it, how you sign up to the website, this sort of stuff? I'm happy to answer any questions you might have now or later. Okay, guys. So we'll move swiftly on. Dr. Robert Phillips is now going to speak about entrepreneurship in healthcare.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. So we'll bring up your slides.
You can tell I'm a lecturer by being reliant on the set of PowerPoint slides. There you go.
Is it this one?
Yes, indeed.
There is a clicker there as well.
I think I'll be okay just by pressing it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. I think I'll just... Okay, great. So thanks very much. Thanks for the invitation to come and speak. I'm Rob Phillips, and I've kept it kind of fairly light and fluffy as it's a Friday night. So I hope that you'll enjoy it. I'll just tell you a little bit about me first. A little bit about ideas, then how we might get ideas, how we might think about things. What makes a good case for a business plan? I guess you're probably going to hear that elsewhere. But I've got my own slide as well, which might help you with that. I've got some healthcare specific stuff as well, which might be of interest to you. I do work in that field, I've got experience in that field. So I have got a few extra slides which might be of interest. Okay? And then, of course, if there's any questions at the end, that'll be fine. Well, first a little bit about me. I had the best possible start, of course, of my career by going to UCL. Okay. And I did applied molecular biology and biotechnology, primarily because it had a very long and exciting sounding name. But I also had a placement at Glaxo during that time at Greenford, at the Greenford site in West London. It closed down just after I left. In fact, nothing to do with me, of course. But I was working there on high throughput screening. Okay, so that was quite an exciting area at the time. Glaxo had millions of compounds. They had no idea what they did. Okay, they had numbers and not names. So one of the things I was doing was creating a test, so we could test all these compounds sort of pretty quickly to find out what they did. Okay, I moved on to University of Southampton to do a PhD there, and I was one of the first case studentships. I hope that's not showing my age. And it was with a company called Actinova. They were interested in antibody technology. One of the things my main part of my project there was I had a protein that could bind to antibodies from the human blood. Okay, it's very useful. It allowed you to separate antibodies when you were making them sort of in vitro, and got patented. I thought this has got loads of commercial applications. Unfortunately, there was a big development in another field around about the same time, which meant that my speciality purification technique was no longer needed. Okay, so I didn't become the millionaire that I thought I was going to at that time. Okay, so I had to get a real job instead. Well, actually, not a real job. I got a postdoc after that, in fact. Okay, so I worked at Mill Hill in London. Okay, another place that's moved since I worked there, National Institute of Medical Research. And what I did with there was I was working on sensors that detect phosphate molecules. Okay, now, phosphate's given off whenever there's energy release, like if you're whenever you use muscle. Okay, there's a phosphate released, and we could detect that using various fluorescent sensors. And again, those were patented, some before my time, but some while I was there. And we ended up licensing those out to a company called Invitrogen in the US, who were selling them essentially on our behalf. So that again, that was keeping me involved in commercial processes, despite the fact that I was very much in academia. And then I applied for a lectureship at Manchester Business School, not necessarily in keeping with my previous qualifications, and I got it. Okay, so what I do now is I lecture in entrepreneurship to scientists and engineers. Okay, so I do special entrepreneurship units to scientists and engineers throughout the university. I've helped to manage several University of Manchester spin-outs. Iduron is one which makes carbohydrate research reagents. Another one is called Allergenetica, which makes vaccines, allergy vaccines, which is based in Tenerife. Okay, so I always manage to find time to go out for the annual general meeting for that. I do a bit of consultancy as well. I specialise really in looking at science proposals and turning them into a business plan. I've had quite a lot of success doing that. But unfortunately, normally it's such early stage companies that they can't afford to pay me very much. Okay, so I normally do a bit of that. I run various entrepreneurship activities for postgrads, specifically scientists. So I run events with sort of big name speakers. I have an enterprise school that I run every year where we try and work on real business ideas, where we get out and we speak to real businesses and real customers. Sometimes some of the ideas get knocked back when they end up speaking to real customers, which is a good learning experience. And also I'm a judge for various competitions as well. Venture Further is a business plan competition in Manchester, which is £10,000 each in the various categories. And the judges are normally in quite good agreement really with the ideas that we see there and the ones that we like. I've also been a judge on occasion for Shell Livewire, where the judges never agree on which are the best ideas. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. I've been involved in sort of commercialisation from an academic point of view. So where do ideas come from then? Well, I suppose the main way is by experiencing a problem for yourself. So how many times have you been in a situation where you thought, oh, there's got to be a better way of doing it than this? Okay, that is the seed really for you to start thinking about a business idea. Okay, so there's several good examples out there. For example, somebody like Karen Bilimoria, who set up Cobra Beer, had a very serious problem. Okay, he couldn't find the right type of beer to go with Indian food. Okay? So he had to look for a beer that actually matched Indian food, and then he started his company selling Cobra Beer. Even though one of my friends works for a company in Cambridge called AppCam, okay, which is pretty successful, and they started by a postdoc essentially not being able to find the antibodies they wanted in one place. So the founder actually was selling antibodies, going around different labs selling antibodies to different people. Okay, so he found a problem for himself and came up with a solution. Another way is, of course, applying ideas seen elsewhere to your situation. Okay, so using one technique and applying it in different situations. Okay, my PhD supervisor made a career out of doing that essentially. Okay, having a few techniques and applying them to various situations. Okay, again, very simple ones. The founder of Yo Sushi. Okay, he worked out in Japan for a while. He liked the sushi bars and the food going around, so he came to the UK and he set that up here, and it was pretty successful. Okay, so looking at ideas elsewhere and applying it to your situation works. Spotting opportunities while working in your industry. So the average age of a graduate entrepreneur is 39. Okay, so sadly I've just gone past that time at the moment, but a lot of people I know that I did a PhD with are starting their own businesses. Okay, people who I didn't think were particularly enterprising at the time, because when you're in your particular industry, you can see how things are done. You can see how things might be done better. Okay, lifestyle or social changes might bring on ideas for you as well. Okay, so you look at city centres around the UK. How things have changed. People used to live in the suburbs, but now people are living in the city centres. Okay, loads of like 1- and 2-bedroom flats have been put up. Okay, because people are getting married later and divorced earlier. So there's more cause now for needing these smaller places. Okay, and we like our city centre living. We like to be near bars and shops, etc. Now. Okay, so social changes really have brought opportunities for us as well. Okay, So political issues like governments maybe clamping down on emissions, okay, or energy ratings. One of my former students set up a business making sort of rating different buildings for their energy ratings. Okay, so that's the government putting that law in place that basically put a business proposition in front of them essentially. Okay, and new technology, of course, can also bring ideas. So 20 years ago, who'd ever heard of an app? Okay, now there's people that are making millions out of apps, and this is probably quite a Manchester-specific one, but graphene. Okay, Manchester is big on graphene at the moment. So a thin layer of carbon, which is essentially going to be in all electronics in the future, apparently. Okay, so do those bring opportunities as well? So ideas can come from anywhere. Okay, so I'm not very good at coming up with ideas myself. If I've got a blank white sheet of paper in front of me, it would still probably be blank in a few days' time. I'm not very good at thinking ideas, but I'm good at thinking about problems. Okay, I'm good at thinking about problems. Oh, this is an example of a student from Manchester who found it difficult to park around the university. So he actually started finding people who were prepared to rent out their drives to allow people to park there. Okay, that's quite a novel solution really to that problem. Okay, so it's quite a good idea to look at problems that you've had yourself. That might be quite a good place to start if you're looking for ideas. Okay. Unfortunately, though, new product development is quite risky. So for any 100 ideas that are put forward, normally about 10 end up going to market, and one ends up recouping its development cost and making a profit. Okay, or depending on what other research you look at, about 1 in 50 to 1 in 100 ends up making a profit. Okay, so it's a risky pursuit. Okay, it is a risky pursuit. So what might we need to when we're thinking about putting together a case for our business? Okay, well, here's a short list, which is probably comparable with most people's ideas of what you might need. You need to have state what your unique selling point is. So what is your product or service? Okay, and you need to be able to explain the benefits of it. Okay, what is the benefit to the customer for using this? Not the features, not what it has, but what it's going to do for you. What's it going to do for a customer? And you need to be able to describe it in non-technical language. Okay, so a lot of the people you're going to speak to might be sort of venture capitalists perhaps, or other business people, potential customers perhaps. They may not know the sort of tech side of it. Okay, they're just interested maybe perhaps in the benefits of it. So being able to describe it as a problem that you're solving, okay, is actually quite a good way of doing it. Okay, a lot of people describe it as this is the problem and here is our solution. So we want to know a little about the market as well. Okay, so the things we might want to know here is the market size. Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with databases like Mintel and Frost and Sullivan, Keynote. Those kind of give you sort of market data about how many people are buying this type of product, how much money is spent every year on this type of product. And this gives you a market size, perhaps. Okay, and the trends are important as well. So, is it going up? Is it going down? What are the trends within that particular industry? What are the drivers behind it as well? Okay, so we're looking at maybe if you're looking maybe at something like diabetes, for example. Okay, that's becoming a problem not just in the Western world. A friend of mine's a doctor in Saudi Arabia, and he says it's becoming a big problem there. So what are the drivers behind that? Well, we're eating more sugary foods, we're getting fatter, okay? And those are the drivers perhaps behind getting more people getting diabetes. And what's the competition? What's already out there at the moment? What are the competitor products? Okay? What is it? Who is a typical customer? It's quite a nice technique sometimes to try and imagine your customer as a real person. Okay? What sort of person is going to be buying this product? And the behaviour as well of the customers as well. Okay, so if you're into drug discovery and you're going to the NHS, okay, they're going to be your big main customer. Okay, so they might be making a yes or no decision. So it's not end users you're selling to. You're selling to a large organisation who's going to be giving a yes or no decision. Okay, so the end users may not necessarily be the decision makers. Okay, you've got to try and understand the whole process really when it comes to the market. Operations. So how is the whole thing going to work? Okay. So how are you going to manufacture it? Is it going to be manufactured here? Is it going to be manufactured overseas? Okay. How are you going to get to the customer? Is it going to be something where you're just going to be, people are going to be able to order online and you're going to be sending it out? Okay. How are you going to advertise? So there's quite novel ways of advertising these days instead of using the traditional methods. Okay. Does anybody here use things like Snapchat? Anybody use something like that? Anybody use that? Okay. So that's really good for advertising because it's messages that disappear really quickly. You're encouraged to act quickly. Okay. So I've got loads of emails in my inbox, probably going back decades, where I've seen a good offer, and I said, oh yeah, I'll go and do that at some point. And I've never ever gone back to it. Okay. But with something like Snapchat, where the message disappears, you're encouraged to act quickly. Okay. So that's quite good. It's quite a good way of advertising. Okay. There could be IP issues as well. I guess IP issues is maybe for an entire talk in its own right. Okay. But obviously patenting is important, but also you might look at trademarking the name of your product, the name of your company, in order to sort of protect the brand, I suppose, using trademarks. So the practicalities and how is the whole thing going to work? Is it practical? Okay. So the next one is who? The team. Is there a good balance of skills? Okay. So venture capitalists might be able to do some of the work. They might put in some financial checks and balances, for example, but it would be good if there's a good mix of skills. So obviously MBAs and scientists mixing together is putting that together. Okay, and also you normally would expect to see some sort of financial prediction. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen over the next 3 years? So what are your assumptions? Okay, and if there is an equity investor on board, like a venture capitalist, they might want to see how you plan to exit the company. So a VC is going to make their money not just by having a little small amount of profit every year that the company makes, but by actually being able to sell their stake further down the line. Okay? Either through what's called trade sale, where maybe a competitor comes and buys you out, or by an IPO, initial public offering, where the VCs can sell their stake then as you float it on the stock market. Okay. So if you cover these areas, this is kind of quite a good grounding really for a business plan. Okay, and for those of you who prefer a nice colourful slide, I put it on a nice colourful slide as well. Okay, and a company overview, of course, at the front. I was speaking to a friend of mine a while back, and he says he reads something like 2,000 business plans a week. Okay, and he says he only ever reads the executive summary or the company overview at the beginning, and that tells him basically whether he's going to carry on reading. Okay? So you've got to kind of make it catchy and punchy and make people want to carry on reading. Okay? So those are the issues traditionally in a business plan you might expect to cover. Okay? And of course the business plan is it's there really to clarify your thoughts so you can communicate that with other people. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily have to stick strictly to this, you just have to be able to communicate this to other people. Communicate people who may be not in your field. So, don't really want to put a slide about things going wrong, perhaps on a Friday night, but here are the ways that basically some of the things go wrong. Okay, so of course there's more ideas out there, more good ideas out there than there is money to support them. Okay, of course. So you don't get the money. So you apply and you don't get any money. And I think what was being alluded to in the questioning a little bit earlier on is the funding gap as well. Okay? Whilst I'm not going to make any promises about this competition, I'd say it's relatively easy to get hold of amounts of money, sort of 10, 20k from various sources. Okay? I've got a database, a searchable database, and if I put in an idea into that database, it'll probably come up with about 100 to 150 different things I could apply for. Okay? All sorts of things from the Prince's Trust, various business plan competitions, Nesta, all sorts of different things that might be out there to provide you with money. Okay? So there's a gap really. Whilst it's quite easy to get very small amounts of money, to get the sort of 250k plus, where it might be too much maybe for a business angel and you're looking for a very large investor perhaps, that's a little bit difficult. And I just echo the comments that were made earlier, that you can use these amounts of money of 10 or 20k to move your business a bit forward, okay, to de-risk it. So maybe you make a prototype, maybe you file some intellectual property. Okay? So by moving things further forward and de-risking them, you're bringing it to a stage maybe where a larger investor is prepared to put some money in. Okay? So if you're just a team and an idea, maybe that's a bit that's going to be a bit an early stage even for a venture capital company. Okay. You could of course not be addressing the problem. Okay. So don't know if you can see that that umbrella there. It's got plastic sheeting all the way around to stop somebody getting wet. But it's, whilst on paper you can see why that might have been a good idea, in practice it's very, very cumbersome. Okay, it's awful. I don't know where you would put that if you're waiting for it to dry, and unsurprisingly it ended up not being a success. Okay. Yeah, so there's often like I say, a ghost market as well. So on paper you can show that there's an increasing market, you can show that people buy these sort of things. When you release your product, people don't buy it for whatever reason. Okay, and that's quite problematic because that's quite difficult to spot. So for some reason people don't end up buying the product. Okay, now the other reason, which could be very, very applicable to your type of ideas, is the infrastructure is not there at the moment. Okay, so this is a mobile phone, being able to access internet through a mobile phone. The idea has been around obviously for years. Now we're used to it these days, but a while back when we had WAP, Wireless Application Protocol, it was very clunky, it didn't work very well, and people didn't really want it. Okay, so it didn't really catch on. And also infrastructure could be important for other things as well. You look at things like hydrogen-powered cars. Okay, brilliant idea. Where do you get hydrogen from? You get it from water. Okay, no pollution when you burn it, but the infrastructure required to be doing that would be massive. Okay, so having these filling stations, hydrogen will probably have to be kept frozen. Okay, otherwise it's just going to float up into the air. So if the infrastructure is not there, then again you've got a bit of a problem. So trying to understand whether the infrastructure is there is important. Your competitor reaction, so competitors might do a number of things when you release your product. They might have a massive advertising campaign. They might have their own products ready. They might engage in a price war with you. They might do what's called predatory pricing, where they lower their prices and try and push you out to the market. So things like that might happen. There could be IP issues, so somebody could get around your patent somehow. Okay, so CAT scanners, for example, that in hospitals, EMI came up with those. But General Electric looked at the patents, they found a way around them, and because they already had people selling to hospitals, they got in there, and they're the market leader now. So yeah, somebody could get around your patent, or you could end up being sued for whatever reason. Scalability as well, and growing the business, probably put those two together. Okay, as you grow the business, you might be getting different customers. Okay, you might be targeting different people. Look at something like a mobile phone, for example. When they first came out, it was the early adopters who bought them, people who had quite a lot of money, people who wanted to buy the latest technology, and if it didn't catch on, never mind, just go and buy the next thing that comes out. Okay, and then that kind of